Perspectives. One life touches many. Poems and History about John Gilbert Jarvis, Part 2. History. John Gilbert Jarvis lived from 1871 to 1941. In Part 1, we listened to poems written about John Gilbert Jarvis by 3 women who knew him. We came to know the John Gilbert Jarvis of verse. We turn now to the John Gilbert Jarvis of history. To find this John Gilbert Jarvis of history, we must go to Black River in Prince Edward County, Ontario, Canada. Fanny Farfern Scott will now give the introduction to our theme.
Then he clasps her in his arm and talks about his little farm. Of course, of such there is no harm, Gilbert Jarvis.
Fanny's reference to Gilbert's little farm was modest because it was to play a large role in the economy of the Black River area of Prince Edward County. This farmhouse is actually a view of the Jarvis family farm. It was Gilbert's father, Samuel's property, abutting Lake Ontario, not too far down the road southeastward from Gilbert's farm. In the 19th century, the farmers of Prince Edward County raised various grains for the breweries of America, south and across the lake. But as attitudes began to change in America, the farmers of Prince Edward County decided to establish a new market that was not dependent upon these attitudes of their neighbors to the south. The farmers of the area established a co-op, where each had a part in a much larger purpose. This was the beginning of the Black River Cheese Company. The Black River Cheese Company was founded in 1901 and it quickly established a reputation for making superb cheeses, a reputation which has continued to this day. This 1905 photograph shows the horse-drawn wagon technologies of the times. Life and transportation were harder in those days. Gilbert Jarvis became the manager of the Black River Cheese Company for a time. The woman in white standing in the doorway is Gilbert's wife, Mabel Jarvis. This 1985 photograph shows the refurbished building of the Black River Cheese Company. The woman standing by the sign is Priscilla, a granddaughter of Gilbert and Mabel Jarvis. Whenever visiting the area where her mother grew up, Priscilla drops by the Black River Cheese Company to see if they still make a superb cheese. She's never been disappointed. Out of sight and just beyond next door is the first home of Gilbert and Mabel Jarvis, the house where Priscilla's mother Evelyn grew up. In this 1987 photograph, we see Priscilla's mother, Evelyn, in front of her childhood home. Evelyn was born in 1907 and grew up here. The house has passed out of the family hands now, but the new owners are always willing to give a friendly tour of the place during family pilgrimages. Here, Evelyn Audrey Jarvis Humber stands in the backyard of her childhood home in Black River. Priscilla poses in front of Scott's Mill in Milford, just a few miles from the Black River Cheese Company. This photograph was taken in 1995, the same year her mother Evelyn wrote the second of her poems we heard earlier, entitled My Father. Mabel Jarvis is a Scott by birth, and this was her family home's mill. Priscilla's grandmother Mabel was born a Scott, and her mother was Mary Ann Farr Scott, married to William Byron Scott. Mabel's younger sister Fanny was a Scott as well. So, Scott's Mill in Milford is a part of the heritage of Priscilla's mother on her mother's side, just as the Black River Cheese Company is a part of her heritage on her father's side. Unlike the Black River Cheese Company, Scott's Mill is no longer in operation. It has been turned into a museum. Let us now take a look at the Scott family. Here we have a 1914 photograph of the Scott family. Among others, we find John and Mabel Jarvis and their children. This is where the Scott and Jarvis lines merge into an ever-broadening circle. One life affects the lives of many others. We see Mary Ann Farr Scott circled on the left, and her husband, William, is circled on the right. These are the Scotts of Scotts Mill in Milford. The colour coding of the photograph may be interpreted as meaning the elders in dark and the youngers in light. The man in dark sitting near William Scott is the eldest son, Albert. Here is Fanny Scott. She was the youngest of the Scott children. Fanny Scott wrote the first poem we listened to in 1900, when she was 11 years old. If you recall, it was the cute piece entitled Gilbert Jarvis, anticipating the future marriage of her older sister, Mabel, to John Gilbert Jarvis. The woman now circled to the left and above Fanny is Mabel Scott Jarvis. Fanny was quite a bit younger than her sister of Mabel. Mary Ann's maiden name was Farr. She sits here as the matriarch of an ever-expanding family. As you recall, it was Mary Ann Farr Scott who wrote the poem, To My Son-in-Law, a heartfelt and lovely piece of literature. Mary Ann's son-in-law, Gilbert Jarvis, sits not far from her, with his wife, Mabel, just behind. Thinking back to Mary Ann's poem, it appears that the fruit is not far from the bough. Gilbert and Mabel Jarvis are shown here, an established couple with a large family of children, 6 of 7 appearing in this portrait. Mabel is holding her youngest daughter at the time, Lucille. In a couple years, Letha would be born. Gilbert has another of their daughters on his lap. Her name is Maud. We shall now take a quick look at their family of 7 children. This is one of the classic family pictures of the family heritage. Gilbert and Mabel had 6 daughters and 1 son, Gordon. To the right of Gordon is Evelyn Audrey Jarvis, who is Priscilla's mother. This presentation was produced by Priscilla's household, so Evelyn Audrey Jarvis is of special interest, above her siblings, to our perspective. Here in the Scott family portrait, we see Evelyn Audrey Jarvis at 7 years in 1914. She wrote the 3rd and 4th poems we heard in part 1. The first was called Reminiscences, which looked back to when Gilbert gave her away in marriage, and the second was entitled My Father, a memory of her father when she was a girl, written later in life, when she was 88 years old. From this 1987 Jarvis family reunion photograph, we see the local church, which the Mabel and Gilbert Jarvis family used to attend in these early days. Walking through the graveyard of the church, the Jarvis name is prominent. Among other gravestones, we find the memorial for Samuel Jarvis and his wife Villette Blair, as well as for other family members. Evelyn Jarvis is a woman in white, and her sister Maud is in blue next to her. Maud was the infant sitting on Gilbert Jarvis' lap in the 1914 family photograph. Samuel Jarvis and Villette Blair are Gilbert Jarvis' parents and Evelyn's grandparents. We shall now look at a graphic representation of their place in the family tree. To give us some perspective, we present Samuel Jarvis and Villette Blair in the red box here. They are of the same generation as William and Mary Ann Farr Scott. This list of the 11 children of Samuel Jarvis and Villette Blair is taken from Charles Humber's book, Family Sleuthing. John Gilbert Jarvis was the firstborn. We present the list here just to give you some idea of the magnitude of their family. On the memorial stone of Samuel Jarvis and Villette Blair that we saw earlier, we can partially read John Gilbert, 1871 to 1941, and his wife, Mabel Scott, 1881 to 1968. The graphics we have been using come from a family heritage series that narrows the focus to the bloodline of Priscilla. In her then culminates past generations. In reality, however, just as from her emanates future generations, our sphere of influence and life ever widens and never narrows. One life touches many. The life of John Gilbert Jarvis was one life that touches many. Heartfelt poems were written about him. New things came into existence because of him, not just his 7 children, who have all passed on now. The farm he worked is still there, and we remember it. The house he lived in still stands, and we still visit it. The cheese factory he helped bring into existence still supports many and delights many others when they buy his cheese. The poems about him are still heard, and we remember him. One life touches many.